Hello, and welcome to You Should Hear This, a podcast for the Everyday Association professional. I'm Chris Beeman, your host. Today's podcast is brought to you by Visit Bloomington. In the heart of the U.S. Midwest, Bloomington, Indiana is the perfect place to host a small to mid-sized meeting, convention, or conference. Offering unique and flexible venues available to groups of up to 400 people, as well as a hub for higher education at Indiana University, a nationally revered culinary scene, and natural wonders like the Hoosier National Forest and Monroe Lake, Bloomington is sure to wow your guests during and after your event. Go to visitbloomington.com to start planning your next meeting. Now, to introduce our exciting guests today. Tonja Eagan, MPA, CAE, CFRE, CMFC, is the Chief Executive Officer for KDP. An award-winning leader, Tonja has successfully led national, statewide, and local-based nonprofit organizations in education, youth, and human services for the past 25 years. And a fun fact, Tonja was one of the first 100 people in America to earn a master's degree with a concentration in nonprofit management and leadership. Next up, Dr. Wendy Amato. Wendy is the Chief Academic Officer of K-12 Coalition, parent company to Teaching Channel, iTeach, Insight Education Group, and Lavinia Group. Wendy began her career in education in 1991, and she still teaches at UVA's School of Education. She's passionate about collaborating with people and organizations who share the mission of teaching for the greater good. And last but not least, Melani. Michelle is the Director of Knowledge Integration for KDP. She's a seasoned technical writer and editor with 25 plus years of experience in both the publishing industry and the corporate world. Michelle is primarily responsible for strategizing and operationalizing the partnership between KDP and K-12 Coalition, which began with the Teaching Channel. Welcome, Tonja, Wendy, and Michelle.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So let's dive right into this idea of partnerships. I think, from my conversations around ISAE and ASAE and just around the industry, partnerships is something that's really on the minds of a lot of association leaders right now. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the relationship between your organizations. And Tonja, I think it makes sense to maybe start with you. I personally love how you use the phrase win-win-win. And so just curious how, in what ways everyone is winning.
Sure. I love to talk about the triple win. So the way that we're win-win and winning is because KDP members, of course, benefit. KDP as an organization benefit and Teaching Channel benefit. So it's a win-win-win. The way our members benefit, which is very important, is they receive unique, high-quality professional development and coaching opportunities from Teaching Channel. The way our organization, KDP, benefits is because we can add this amazing value to our membership by providing it at no cost to members, thanks to a special multi-million-dollar in-kind partnership with the Teaching Channel to inspire and equip our teachers to thrive. And then Teaching Channel wins because they benefit from the partnership by connecting with tens of thousands of future and current teachers who are KDP members who utilize the Teaching Channel videos and podcasts. And this also introduces these teachers to Teaching Channel, so perhaps they'll advocate in their school districts to get that benefit for all the teachers. And it also helps Teaching Channel fulfill their mission to help teachers thrive and be the best in the classroom so their students can too. And then our missions just align perfectly, as well as our values. So this led us to start partnership conversations in April of 2021.
Wow. And I'm glad you mentioned that last part, because I was going to say, and I was hoping to get a chuckle, though we're all muted, that surely these things just happen overnight, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
No
right.
overnight success.
Exactly. So I guess thinking, going all the way back, what really initiated this partnership? What was that initial spark that led to some exploration and the development of, a multi-year agreement?
Well, I can take that. This is Michelle. We originally connected, our organizations did, because of a book that was published by KDP called The New Teacher's Guide to Overcoming Common Challenges. KDP's publisher, Rutledge, had been contacted by the director of professional programs at Teaching Channel to explore using this book for a new Teaching Channel course. The publisher did a mutual introduction of us, which led to our initial partnership forming around the creation of a new course called Cultivate, a program for new teachers. And we really just did an MOU around that. Wendy was involved in the conversations around creating that initial MOU, but we realized that the missions of our organizations were so closely aligned that we decided to explore a larger partnership between Teaching Channel and KDP to benefit all of KDP's members and both of our organizations.
The beauty is the way our missions align. And Chris, your topic for us today gets at the heart of everything in education, because we know that across the industry, everybody's resources are limited. There are really good ideas, there are valuable new initiatives, and so many of them just get left on the shelf. They gather dust because we don't have all of the resources as people, money, time that gets consumed with other things that may be at the little higher on the list. But the partnerships for us are about sharing resources, and it allows all of us to sort of power up and do the good things, activate the good ideas, and take care of the initiatives that we know make a difference. For us with KDP, being involved in a multi-year way means having a really sustained dialogue and investing in the ongoing interests and the work that we each are doing. Each organization benefits. We stay attentive to changes and revisions and new opportunities. As time moves forward, we're able to move forward together.
And one thing I love, Michelle, you talked about how in the original conversation around a partnership, it was the idea of a singular course, right? It was that
Right.
initial, there was a spark, but there wasn't this lengthy, I assume at the start, this conversation of what all could be, but there was an initial idea. And I think so many of us, at least myself, put off those initial conversations because we may not feel like they're enough. But I mean, would you agree that we should pursue even those small ideas to figure out what is going to make sense long term?
Absolutely. I mean, you're completely right. This amazing partnership that we have now really started with a very finite idea of creating a course around a book that we had published. And then it grew into what it is now, a 6-year strategic partnership between our two organizations.
And I think every small idea is a seed to potential innovation. So you never know what seeds you're planting or that you're receiving when you connect with other people, and whether they grow today or they may grow in 10 years. But it's amazing the magic of collaboration, communication, and just being open to start small. Every journey starts with one small step.
Tony, I appreciate how you share be open, because I think sometimes we approach conversations, especially with partners, with an idea of what we want or what's going to work for us. And I think it's really important to remain open-minded. Speaking of open-minded, Michelle, I have a question for you as someone who's sort of in the weeds with this day to day. As our world continues to evolve and change, how do you adapt and pivot when so much of our partnerships are really defined and written as formal agreements? I guess my question is, in what ways are you able and willing to be flexible, and maybe in what ways are you not?
Good question. Yeah, actually, we have had lots of opportunities within this partnership to be flexible, because everything never just runs smoothly as you think it should. So first of all, we ran into a lot of technical difficulties implementing a single sign-on so that KDP members could access Teaching Channel through their KDP login. We realized that our computer network needed to be significantly upgraded to align with the robust offerings of Teaching Channel. And since it took so long to get this set up, like the better part of a year, in fact, the president of Teaching Channel graciously offered to extend our partnership agreement by a year, which was amazing on his part. Another adaptation is that when we first created the partnership, Teaching Channel was really interested in growing their library of classroom videos and wanted introductions to KDP member teachers to film in their classrooms. Now, Teaching Channel has been so successful at expanding their video library that they pivoted to seeking teachers to be on their podcast, which Wendy does. So we've amended the clause in our agreement to reflect this change. And one suggestion that I would give is that when you create the partnership agreement, write into that agreement that amendments can be agreed to via email rather than needing to create an official signed amendment just to update one clause. It makes everything a lot easier as you go along.
Nice. And our listeners can't see this, so I want to share. Everyone's nodding their head around the Zoom call right now. Wendy, I'm curious from your perspective, what does flexibility and adaptation look like?
I'll tell you that one of the things that I wanted to add to in thinking about this, the value of a written agreement, there are some things that may not go into the written agreement but need to be understood. And I'll tell you, when I see an email in my inbox from Michelle Melani, it gathers no dust. I am eager to make sure that I'm connected with her, and it's just a priority to me as a human being and a colleague to be responsive. And those are the kinds of things you can't really put in writing, but when it's a good partnership because that happens out of the will to work together. And in our case, we do communicate regularly. I can't think of a single instance where either organization just sort of pushed out a formal revision or request without having the soft conversations first. And those make all the difference. Sometimes opening a conversation about a topic can result in exponentially more because we begin to ask questions and realize that there are some things that we couldn't have anticipated on our own. So good communication is essential. And we're learning more about one another's strengths. That just takes time. So everything that we might have thought we could put into a written agreement at the beginning, gosh, it doesn't begin to represent what we're able to do now because we know one another better. And similarly, we're recognizing where we have some overlap. And we're careful not to confuse those. There are some things that are just very KDP. There are some things that are just very teaching channel, and we respect that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially there's always maybe a hidden fear of, competition between us in the association world and our industry partners, just because, it's ultimately it's time and attention that we're seeking, right? And there's always the financial component as well, but I think it's really important, that piece that you mentioned to respect, those boundaries, what you each bring to the table and the value. So I appreciate you sharing that, Wendy. I'm curious, and I think I'm going to put Tonja on the spot here first. Tonja, throughout your career, it's no doubt you've led many partnerships and seen many come to fruition. So I'm curious, related to this partnership, what is one of your biggest lessons learned? It could be something the organization has learned, or even yourself.
Sure. Well, I think one of the big takeaways I have, which I've learned in the past, but I think this partnership just signifies it even more, is how important it is to designate staff time and resources to really maximize a partnership. I mean, it's really like any highly successful relationship in life. It's going to be a direct result of the commitment, the effort, the quality of work that everyone shares between the staff representing each organization. I think a lot of times, we start strong with partnerships and then they fizzle out because staff get diverted to other projects or one partner's more invested than the other. So it really does take a dedicated leader from each organization, closely communicating and collaborating with each other, just like Wendy and Michelle have done over 3 years. And then also, I think just dreaming big, realizing that just because it's a proposal that's in writing and signed doesn't mean we stop there and doesn't mean it can't be modified. So I love that the two of them dream big to find new ways to help teachers thrive. And that's wonderful for everyone.
Michelle and or Wendy, any lessons learned on your end?
Um, I would just say that I learned the importance of relationship building and partnerships and being honest about what each party wants to gain from the partnership. Transparency and trust are vital. And I would just reiterate what Wendy said. Whenever I see an email from Wendy in my inbox or anyone from Teaching Channel for that matter, it gathers no dust. That is a highly important relationship, and it needs to be, nurtured and cultivated and grown as our different organizations grow and change. Teaching Channel has actually evolved a lot since we first created this partnership. And so conversations shift. And for me, it's all about the relationship and the communication.
The lessons learned are personal, professional, and organizational. On the personal side, I get the joy of the new relationships that have come out of KDP, both the organization itself and then through the organization. That member network is everything that KDP says it is when it invites people to join. I've met some wonderful educators and have ongoing conversations with them thanks to my relationship with KDP. On a professional note, I have learned some really good things about communication. I've had an opportunity on the professional side to speak to groups that I wouldn't have been able to join before. So the lessons learned for me there are that you don't know where opportunities are going to come from, and so you may have some growth that's beautiful and unexpected. And that at an organizational level, thinking about how a for-profit and a nonprofit come together has been a really interesting concept for me. I feel that maybe on the outside, people could assume that a for-profit is just bankrolling or just writing a check for things. But that's not the case when you're really in a true partnership and when your missions are as aligned as ours, when you are addressing a call to service, and when you're in the education industry, it's much more than check writing. And so I've learned things on the personal side, the professional side, and at the organizational level, and it's been great.
Wendy, I appreciate you sharing that from the for-profit perspective because I think there's probably a misconception too that associations often, in my full-time professional gig, I basically sell sponsorships all day long. And I think there's a misconception that at the end of the day, all we want is the money, but we really truly do want and need the partnership of and the collaboration and communication, all these things from our partners to make sure that these partnerships are most effective.
There are probably some times where my organization may wish for me to dial up a little bit of the commercial message that I bring when I have opportunities to speak, but I'm in for the long haul. And I believe that maintaining the relationship and honoring the bigger mission is ultimately going to provide success for both of our organizations. So a short-term gain versus a long-term evolution of relationship and goals, that's what I'm in for.
I love it. So, this podcast is really geared towards association leaders, some of which are looking to provide innovative ideas to their staff, to their peers, even to their supervisors and bosses. And so, Tonja, I think what I'm curious next about is if you had the opportunity to relay any piece of advice for association leaders listening in who are just getting started thinking about building these types of partnerships, what are some key things that you'd like to convey to them?
Okay, I have my top five because we all like that. So, in addition to being committed to dedicating the staff and resources, it's really important to integrate into the organizational work plan the partnership, the outcomes, the everything from working with the marketing team to the member services team to the finance team to make sure everyone truly understand what this partnership is and how it is a win-win-win. Definitely keep the CEO and board informed and updated on progress, on challenges, so they also can celebrate the partnership. Be highly selective when you do form partnerships. I think, any association is inundated with partnership opportunities, and you end up saying no more often than you say yes, and that's okay because you really want to be selective and make sure your partner shares the same mission, values, brand, even their strategic direction, does it align? So that's very important. And saying yes to the right partnership opportunities is worth saying no to three that really didn't align. And, maybe someone suggested, you do it and you don't think you should. Also, I would say know your partner's competitors, avoid conflicts of interest whenever you can, because that is going to happen in a big integrated world that we work in. And then sometimes one partner often can feel inferior. Maybe they have less resources, maybe they're smaller in size, but it's very important for both partners to be equal at the table, have that mutual respect and shared decision making. So you really have to think about it as both partners being yoked equally and moving forward equally. Otherwise, there's going to become resentments. There's going to become confusion as to who's in charge, and you want to avoid that. And then number 5, most importantly, just do it. We live in an integrated world, and there is no association that can maximize its potential without strong win-win-win partnerships. So just go out there, plant those seeds, and see what happens.
Absolutely. And Tonja, throughout, what you shared, you mentioned a variety of stakeholders. You've got executive staff, membership teams, the board of directors, all working alongside, the partners too. And I'm curious about something specific, and that is when you're highly selective with your partnerships. And I appreciate you sharing that because there's a temptation, I think, sometimes to go after all the dollars or all the partnerships, and what I heard you say is it really needs to be incredibly intentional and strategic. Who and how do you vet those?
Yeah. Well, in our case, it's typically with the staff team at first. So someone brings an idea. Hey, I had this conversation with so and so, and then we all jump on Google and look at the website, start looking up, everything from 990s to social media posts. Just who is this group, and who are they connected to? And then we establish a meeting, typically with me as CEO and a few key leadership with the organization, just a fact-finding mission to share more. And in our case, we don't take partnerships to our board. I know some organizations have that policy, but as long as it aligns within our mission and our strategic direction and going to help us achieve our member goals and objectives, then we can decide that, as staff, that this is a good partnership. Now, we do consult, I think, on both sides. When we get to the contract agreement, we have legal counsel review the contracts just to make sure everyone's well represented. But outside of that, it's predominantly, staff driven on our part.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's a variety of sizes and compositions of staffs out there, and so I think for the most part, I feel like that's probably a standard approach that staff would sort of do that initial vetting and reviewing. I do know there are some remarkably small staffs, so that would probably feed that right to the board of directors. And just from my personal experience, I'm visualizing that could be a little messy, but So Wendy, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, a similar question. If corporate leaders are finding themselves listening in and wanting to start formulating or conceptualizing a relationship with an association, how would you recommend they approach getting started?
We've talked a lot today about mission, and I think that's the first place to go. I love sassy phrases like lie down with dogs, wake up with fleas. So, do choose carefully. I agree with Tonja. You want to make sure that it's a birds of a feather situation and you keep good company. That's essential. For corporate leaders, I would want them to think about the resources that they have and consider bringing a little bit more to the table when there's definitely a favor or an advantage that you have. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's a data analytics team, maybe it's a reporting mechanism or a technology consultation. But just think about being generous with some of the things that you take for granted in your corporate world that may really make a difference to your partnership and the kinds of resources that others can access easily. I might also suggest that a corporate leader think about the things that are on their mind all the time: key performance indicators, metrics, what does success look like? The kinds of questions that you may ask automatically in your work world are probably good ones to bring to the table when you're in a partnership as well, a collaboration. Like, how will we know when we're both getting what we need out of this relationship? And is that something that we can track so we know we're moving in the right direction?
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything that any of you brought to this conversation today that we haven't covered yet that you would like to impress upon people who are considering partnerships?
I once learned to enter into a partnership with an exit strategy. And I'm not saying that you go into it with one foot out the door. I mean, that sounds like just a bad relationship, really. But it does suggest that each team takes some care to know whose resources are whose, which people are responsible for specific tasks, and what the process is for correcting or adjusting as the partnership goes through changes. So I think it's important to make sure you never feel stuck in a relationship or in a partnership.
Exactly. And I would add too that, yeah, obviously in associations and corporations, there can be staff changes, and that is very important to pay attention to. If you're a new staff member filling the shoes of someone who managed a partnership, you really need to devote the time and attention to understand the history and what creates that partnership to keep that momentum going. Because I do think staff transitions can also really be detrimental to partnerships if they're not very intentionally managed.
It's really interesting. I'm drawing, and I don't know what this is worth necessarily for our listeners, but I'm drawing a ton of parallels between these partnerships that we're talking about and our relationships with spouses, for example, right? And I love that I'm seeing laughter. You've got this, you talk about potential imbalance, right? You've got one partner who might make more in terms of composite or compensation and resources than another, and there's that hard conversation of that imbalance, and there's this baggage that we're bringing in, right? And there's this true, you have to have excellent communication throughout. They have to be top of mind in decisions. And so I guess just for what it's worth, my brain is going there, and I offer that insight for anyone who's thinking about these partnerships. I think what makes a really successful personal relationship, it sounds like, makes a really phenomenal business relationship as well. And I'm seeing head nods, so I
Well
suspect
said.
agreement with that.
Okay, good analogy.
100%.
Well, it has been a pleasure to spend some time with each of you this afternoon. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. The last thing I usually like to ask people is if people would like to be in contact with you to gain additional insights, ask additional questions, how people can connect with you. So would each of you be willing to share where and how to find you? Michelle, why don't we start with you?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, people can contact me at my email, Michelle, Michelle, at kdp.org. And I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me under my name, Michelle Melani.
Awesome.
I'm Wendy Amato and easily searchable. There aren't too many of me, I promise. That's good for the world. I'm wendy.amato at k12coalition.com. And I love to connect with people through LinkedIn. Easy to find there, Wendy W. Amato. And I live in Virginia.
Hello, I'm Tonja Eagan, and my name's spelled a little odd, so I will spell it for you. But my email I live on, so you could reach me there at tonja@kdp.org. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Tonja L. Eagan, Eagan.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for being on our podcast today. That this has been a really insightful and I think powerful message for association leaders who are thinking about this. And I know there's many out there. So I really appreciate the time and thought and all of the information that you shared with us today. And thanks again to Visit Bloomington for sponsoring today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode of You Should Hear This. If you have any questions you'd like answered or future topics you'd like us to explore, please send us an email at info@isae.org. Thank you for your leadership of your associations, and I'll see you over on the next episode of You Should Hear This.